Someone steps into an elevator, the doors close, and for a moment, nothing is happening. Within 5 seconds, almost everyone reaches for a phone. Not because anything urgent happened, but because stillness feels strangely hard to sit inside. Watch the same pattern repeat everywhere. Someone waiting for coffee checks a screen. Someone standing in a checkout line scrolls without really reading anything. A commuter on a bus refreshes an app that has nothing new to show. Every gap gets filled almost instantly with a text, a video, a headline, a song, or just an aimless tap. We rarely reach for our phones only to find information. Often, we reach for them to avoid one small, uncomfortable feeling. Nothing is happening right now. Now, picture a different person, tens of thousands of years earlier. They are sitting near a shelter, and the pressing tasks are already done. Food has been handled, the main tool has been repaired, and the others nearby are resting. The sun has not gone down yet. There is no book to open, no recorded music, no fresh news, and no screen to check. So what does this person actually do? Do they stare into the fire? Tell a story they have told before? Scratch a small mark into a piece of bone? Play with a child nearby? Or do they just sigh and wonder why the afternoon feels so long? It is tempting to imagine that empty moments like this eventually produced art, invention, and civilization itself. The real answer is messier and far more interesting. Because before we ask what ancient humans did when they were bored, we have to ask something else first. Were they actually as free in that moment as we assume? When they weren't hunting, gathering food, or moving camp, ancient humans still had plenty to do. They repaired tools that had started to dull or crack. They processed food that took hours to prepare, not minutes. They gathered and prepared materials for things they would need later. They looked after children who needed constant attention. They tended to someone who was sick or injured. They kept a fire going and used it for warmth, cooking, and light. They made or repaired clothing and simple coverings. They talked with each other. They played. They watched their surroundings closely. And sometimes, they simply rested. Here is the key point. Not doing urgent labor is not the same thing as doing nothing. A person sitting quietly might be recovering from a hard morning. They might be listening to someone else talk or watching the weather change. They might be waiting for someone in the group to return or thinking through tomorrow's route. From the outside, all of this can look identical, a person sitting still. But boredom is a subjective experience, not just an absence of motion. It tends to show up when someone wants to engage with something, but the current moment doesn't satisfy that pull. The activity in front of them might not be interesting enough, meaningful enough, or varied enough to hold attention. So when might an ancient person have actually felt bored? Waiting for prey that never shows up. Repeating the same crafting motion again and again with nothing new to show for it. Sheltering from rain or cold for hours with nothing to do. Listening to a story that has been told one too many times. Our ancestors may not have had social media, but they almost certainly had a relative who told the same hunting story far too often. So the real question isn't whether ancient humans experienced boredom. It's this: when boredom showed up, with no screen available to end it, where did it push them? We cannot excavate a feeling. Archaeology leaves tools, bones, pigments, hearths, footprints, and wear marks, not diary entries saying, "I was bored today." So any answer has to remain careful. We can reconstruct situations in which boredom was possible, then ask what choices existed when attention began looking elsewhere. Boredom can appear even when plenty of tasks are available. It often signals that attention wants a goal the current activity cannot provide. Think of it less as an enemy than an alarm clock with no snooze button and no instructions. Hunger points toward food. Thirst points toward water. Boredom points toward a change in engagement. But signals do not choose wisely for us. They can lead toward play, conversation, exploration, or an impulsive attempt to make anything happen. Mind wandering and boredom are related, but they are not the same thing. When attention is not locked onto an external task, the brain does not simply switch off. The default mode network helps support memories, imagined futures, and the running story we tell ourselves. That is not a creativity switch. A wandering mind can produce a new idea, or replay an argument you already won 3 hours ago. It can also produce an old worry, or a thought about the next meal. Boredom does not create creativity. It creates pressure to redirect attention. Today, that next direction is usually waiting in a pocket. Ancient people had to search somewhere else. Their options were the environment, other people, ongoing work, play, and imagination. To see where attention could go, we need the real rhythm of ancient daily life. That rhythm also changed with seasons and circumstances. A successful hunt or rich food source might briefly reduce pressure. Bad weather could trap people in one place for hours. Scarcity, illness, or conflict could erase anything resembling leisure. Age mattered too, because a child, an injured adult, and an experienced hunter did not live the same day. There are two false pictures worth clearing away first. One, that ancient humans spent their days running from constant danger. Two, that they had endless open hours, just waiting to be filled with inspired creativity. Ancient life was not only about hunting large animals. Much of the actual workload looked far less dramatic than that. Reinforcing a shelter frame before the weather turned, tanning a hide so it wouldn't crack or rot, napping a fresh blade from raw stone, not just fixing an old one, weaving rope or netting from plant fiber, tracking where a herd or a fruiting tree was likely to be in a few weeks, trading tools or favors with a neighboring group, teaching a younger member of the group a skill for the very first time. Some of these tasks demanded intense focus. Others were repetitive, almost automatic, once you knew how to do them. And some of them could be done while talking, telling a story, singing, or listening to someone else. Daily life was not one long, unbroken stretch of danger and action. It moved in a rhythm. Intense effort, slow, steady work, waiting, conversation, rest, and play, all taking turns. Those categories could overlap. Toolmaking might be work, teaching, conversation, and social display at the same time. Rest could include listening, while play could quietly rehearse serious skills. How much genuine free time existed varied enormously from group to group. It depended on the environment, the season, the food supply, and a person's age, role, and health. It would be a mistake to claim ancient humans worked dramatically less, or dramatically more, than people do today. Here's a small paradox worth sitting with for a moment. Repetitive work may have been one place where small improvements quietly appeared. Someone shaping the same kind of tool for the 100th time might notice something new. This angle cuts a little sharper, or this material lasts a little longer. This knot holds more securely, or this shape sits more comfortably in the hand. Some inventions may have begun as tiny adjustments made with a familiar tool still in hand. Nobody in this story is having a eureka moment in a bathtub. So once urgent needs were handled, where could ancient attention go next? The answer looks ordinary at first, but it becomes much bigger than boredom. This is where the real texture of ancient downtime comes into view. Start with maintenance and preparation. Much of the so-called empty time went toward tasks that were useful without being urgent. A stone edge could be sharpened before it became useless. A loose handle could be fixed before it broke. Plant fiber could be twisted into cord for a future need. Food, materials, and living space could be prepared for the days ahead. None of this looks dramatic from the outside, but repetition creates room for mastery, adjustment, and steady improvement. Skilled hands also notice details a beginner cannot yet see. Yet expertise can make a motion automatic, leaving more room for attention to wander. That combination of repetition and awareness is a better place to look for small improvements than boredom alone. That same quiet time also carried caregiving and learning. Children had to be watched, guided, and introduced to the wider environment. A child could learn a tool without ever sitting through a formal lesson. They learned by watching, copying, playing, and trying smaller versions themselves. Play trained coordination, reaction, and control over the body. It also taught social rules and how to read other people's intentions. Work and learning often happened beside conversation and storytelling. A story could entertain, preserve memory, and teach where water or danger might be found. It could explain the group's rules and strengthen a shared identity. A failed hunt could become funny while still teaching someone to avoid a real mistake. Observation filled another kind of quiet. Ancient humans noticed footprints, wind direction, distant sounds, clouds, seasons, and shifts in animal behavior. What looks like staring into space may have been careful information gathering. Then, some activities reached beyond immediate survival. A shell could be drilled and worn even though it did not cut, carry, cook, or keep anyone warm. Pigment could be rubbed onto a tool, a hand, or a body. A rhythm could be tapped out, or a game changed simply because the new version felt better. Such things may have carried identity, belonging, memory, status, or simple delight. This is where a question about boredom becomes a much bigger question. How does an experiment with no immediate survival payoff become part of a culture? Picture someone adding a small decorative mark to an everyday object. That mark doesn't make the object sharper. It doesn't make it more durable. It doesn't add a single extra meal to anyone's day. But someone else notices it. Later, that person recreates something close to the same mark. A third person changes it slightly. A child growing up in the group comes to see that pattern as simply normal, something that was always there. Here is the central idea of this whole video. The moment one person tries something new matters, but it is not yet culture. An idea becomes part of a culture only once it gets seen, relearned, imitated, adjusted, passed on, and kept alive across generations. Culture is not a pile of isolated inventions. It is a chain of attention. One person notices, another remembers, a third alters, and a child receives the result without meeting the first maker. Consider a simple comparison. Plenty of animals play, solve problems, and learn useful behaviors from one another. Humans, however, carry cumulative learning unusually far. We do not have to begin completely from zero in every generation. A child inherits tools already refined by others, techniques already tested, stories already shaped, rules already worked out, sounds and symbols already given meaning, knowledge gathered by people who lived before that child was born. From there, the child can add one small change of their own. So where does boredom fit into all of this? At most, it may have supplied one small nudge at the beginning. A nudge to try a rhythm, alter a pattern, test a material, invent a game, or retell a familiar story. But boredom was never the engine that preserved any of it. For an innovation to survive, it needed time, skill, and available material. It needed someone willing to watch. It needed a community willing to receive it. And it needed shared memory to carry it forward. So the twist is not that boredom built civilization. It is that humans could preserve, share, and improve discoveries, whatever first motivated them. Some of the clearest hints survive as objects researchers can examine. Instruments carved from bone, personnel ornaments, repeated engraved patterns, tools that became more refined over time, traces of pigment, decoration, play, or ritual. An artifact cannot tell us whether its maker felt bored, but it can show that an idea survived, spread, and changed. Now it's worth pulling back from the more romantic version of this story. Ancient humans also experienced exhaustion. Picture someone nursing a cracked rib for weeks, with no real way to rest it. That kind of discomfort was just part of ordinary life. Add hunger, tedious labor, isolation, conflict, loss, and fear. Add the frustration of having little control over what happened next. A stretch of low activity could lead toward reflection, conversation, or play. It could also lead toward anxiety, restlessness, or an impulsive decision. There is no reason to assume our ancestors were always calm during quiet moments. Some empty stretches probably felt less like inspiration and more like enduring the day. Humans are drawn toward novelty, connection, purpose, and changes in our surroundings. That did not begin with modern technology. Phones did not invent our appetite for stimulation. They learned to feed an ancient appetite with extraordinary speed. It's worth correcting one image in particular. Someone quietly staring into a fire. Not everyone doing that was reflecting deeply, inventing a myth, or imagining the future. Some were tired, cold, waiting for food, or avoiding a conversation. Some were probably not thinking about anything notable at all. The same probably goes for anyone repeating a familiar craft over and over that day. Some of those moments produced a small improvement. Most of them were just work. Our ancestors did not possess some mystical trick for enjoying boredom. They simply lived in a world where that discomfort couldn't always be erased within 2 seconds. There was nothing automatically noble or creative about that forced endurance. Sometimes discomfort opened a new direction, and sometimes it remained nothing more than discomfort. With that corrected, it's worth turning this question back toward modern life without turning it into an anti-phone lecture. Phones do not erase boredom. They offer an exit before boredom has time to make us search. Think about transitional moments that used to exist everywhere. Waiting for a bus, walking somewhere, standing in line, or pausing between two tasks. In those moments, a mind could observe, remember, plan, continue an unfinished thought, or start a conversation. It could also do nothing useful at all. Today, that gap can be filled almost instantly with content. Not because modern people are weaker, but because the content is immediate, constantly refreshed, effortless to start, and designed to hold attention. That is not a personal failing. It is an ancient instinct, meeting a machine built to satisfy it instantly. When an activity stops engaging us, mild discomfort appears. Normally, the mind begins searching, chooses another goal, and then engages with it. A screen can skip the searching stage by supplying a ready-made goal. We do not have to decide what deserves attention because something is already waiting. That ready-made goal can be useful, comforting, funny, or genuinely important. The point is not that every glance at a screen is empty. The difference is whether attention searches for its next direction or receives one immediately. None of this is a self-help pitch in disguise. Putting down a phone will not guarantee creativity, cure anxiety, or turn anyone into an artist. There is only one useful idea to take from this. Sometimes an empty moment must last long enough for the mind to choose what comes next. That might mean walking without anything playing, waiting before reaching for a screen, or doing something simple in silence. It means letting a half-formed thought continue for one more minute before cutting it off. So, what did ancient humans actually do when they were bored? We cannot identify boredom directly in an artifact. And downtime was not the same thing as boredom. But when that restless signal appeared, ancient people had no endless stream of ready-made stimulation. Their attention had to move among the options already around them. They might rest, talk, play, watch the world, return to familiar work, or tell a story. They might change a game, test a material, adjust a tool, or try a new pattern. And sometimes they probably did nothing useful at all. They simply felt bored, just as we do. Boredom alone did not produce cave art, music, tools, language, or civilization. But it may have supplied one quiet push. This no longer holds my attention. So what else is there? Sometimes the answer was rest. Sometimes it was a game, a story, or a small change in the way someone shaped an object. Most of those moments disappeared with the afternoon. A few changes lasted because someone else noticed them. Picture an ancient person carving a small mark into an object. A child nearby watches the hand move. Years later, the child repeats the mark after the first maker is gone. That is the part boredom cannot explain by itself. Attention became imitation, and imitation became memory. Now cut to someone living today, caught in a short moment of waiting. Their hand starts drifting toward a phone. Then it pauses. There is no message here demanding that anyone give up technology. Just one small space allowed to last a few seconds longer than usual. Boredom did not build civilization. But the urge to escape it may have pushed humans to play, explore, make things, and tell stories. What changed the world was that someone else could see, remember, and continue. Civilization grew from what happened next.